All right, how you doing, everybody? Great to be back here again. Your leader is here. I've done all the thinking for you, and now I'm just going to lay it out. So over the weekend, we had sort of a homegrown bombing terrorist situation here in New York City, and there was one simultaneously in New Jersey, and then I guess one unrelated in somewhere in Minnesota. But as usual, our buffoonish mayor, this guy, Bill de Blasio, just wants to be a leader and taken seriously so much. He's got to tell you when to drink water when it's hot outside. But this was like a golden opportunity. Finally, I can be like Rudy. The people will listen to me and they'll see me as their Messiah and their Savior and their nanny. So what is he doing? He's saying, bending over backwards right when the whole thing broke. There's no evidence of terrorism in this. However, it was definitely intentional. Now, anybody with half a brain is scratching their head saying, all right, so if it's intentional, it's terrorism of some sort. Of course, what he was saying is that don't think that it's Islamic, radical, jihadist, homegrown terrorism. That was the subtext, you know what I mean? Oh, so let's not jump to conclusions. It was so what was it? Some jealous girlfriend bombed the other woman with ball bearings and nails and so forth, or set the pressure cooker. Well, of course, the truth comes to light. And of course, in fact, it was yet another Islamic, angry, radical terrorist situation. But I just scratch my head. Why bend over backwards so much? I just don't want to call it what it is, and let's not even think that it might be what it is. What the fuck? I mean, seriously. And while all this is going on, they're very busy, the Homeland Security, rubber stamping 800 illegals that were set for deportation, but with a clerical error, and there's been so many clerical errors, 800 of them receive citizenship. And then Obama's doubling down on, we got to close Guantanamo. I mean, just everything completely backwards and wrong. What the fuck, America?
What the fuck America did to me? Trickery or conspiracy? Good white girl, not Hillary, kidding me. Nothing gonna change my sensibility. Life's a bitch, giving all the chivalry. Overheard in a broke man soliloquy. Bust guns or break him down lyrically. Ring bells, I'm talking about liberty. Not tripping, shit got slippery. Fall from the truth in which proximity? Real authenticity, can't rate well when you're false officially. Leave marks, leave parts of history. Who do we charge for the scars initially? Watch your enemies. Everybody brother ended up shot Kennedys.
Yeah, so of course, again, this whole migrant, this refugee situation, I'm going to touch on it later. There's a whole underlying plot that even is besides, registering Democratic voters. It also really kind of, when you see the powers that are behind it and the money that's behind it and the puppeteer strings that are being pulled behind it, you find out that really what we're trying to do is have civil unrest sown in the United States to maybe postpone the election or suspend it because or martial law. All this stuff could happen. It's really not that far-fetched, but one thing that cracked me up, this dopey Donald Duck Trump Jr. lookalike, this fucking guy, actually caught tons of flack because he sent out a picture, he tweeted a picture of, speaking of these refugees, a bowl of Skittles, and delicious as they are, and he said, only 3 of these can kill you. Would you like a handful type of thing? I'm thinking to myself, and of course he caught holy hell from that. Oh, you're analogizing these refugees with candy, and Skittles jumped on board, and and everybody got all worked up. But I really feel like the analogy holds, because the fact is that it's just a bowl that you might otherwise not grab into. I mean, my God, you go to a bar and there's peanuts. Some guy's been in the bathroom with his hand all over his dick, and you're not going to eat those peanuts. So something that could kill you, it's just not a very good risk. So, and people say, oh, well, that's just awful. These are people. Fact of the matter is, you can ask anybody anywhere between 10 and 20, and maybe even more, some people say. I think it's around 15% of these refugees, these these Syrian refugees, these are military-age men, and many of them are radicalized. They don't care for America, and they support jihad in any of its fashion, and ISIS and so forth. But forget if it kills you. I mean, let's really use the analogy. Even if it was going to maybe make me sick, I would just be like, you know what? I'm going to just leave that bowl for now because I don't even want to risk getting sick. You know, who knows? So the analogy really holds for me. You know, unless you're really starving, i.e., the analogy being, but we need immigrants. We'll take the chance. We'll go ahead and take a scoop. We won't get one of the three that'll kill us. But we're not hungry. We don't need the immigrants right now. And that's where all of this debate gets lost. It's not about it being a right to come to the United States, this great mecca. Of course you want to come here from your filthy fucking backwoods country. Of course you do. But what's in it for us? You see what I mean? Are you going to build the railroads? Are you going to educate the children? Are you going to bring the newest vaccine? What is your purpose for being here? Just to take part in the whole idea and freedoms of America? So, I just feel like any common sense is nowadays treated as racism. Any discussion of, vetting people or what are their intentions in coming to the United States. Because let's face it, when the immigrants that we think of, your old granny, who scraped together the fare from Italy and, all the cliched stuff, they wanted to come here and either make a better life for themselves or for their children and their families. They wanted to add to the fabric of it. They didn't want to add to the deconstruction, the fundamental change, and showing us what's the right way. You understand? So, this religion of peace, anyone who subscribes to it should really, really be, taken and vetted, severely vetted. I mean, here's an example of what Paris looks like these days. As you can see, these people all here are refugees on the Parisian streets. They've built their own little camp there. Camp Abu Dhabi, Yabba Dabba Doo, whatever the thing is. And this is what we can expect in the United States. There's no desire to assimilate. There's no desire to meld into the existing society and take advantage of those things that it offers and the freedoms that it offers. So now, to bring any of this up, which is where we get into our whole election cycle that we're in right now, to bring anything up like this, well, gee, maybe we should just chill because we don't really need the immigration right now as we have in the past. Sometimes we needed bodies. We just needed them. Come on in, Nah, we don't really maybe need them. We're good for right now, particularly when they're spouting anti-Americanisms and so forth and so on. But to say anything like this or to question any of this, well, do these values jive? Can they possibly, jive? I mean, we can negotiate. There's on-ramps to love and beauty and happiness. But, at the long run, are we going to kind of end up at the same place, which is more opportunity, broadening of freedoms, more ideas, more capitalism, and rising all ships in the rising tide? No. If you think of any of that or discuss any of that, it now becomes racism. And this is how the left controls the language. And by controlling the language, you're able to control the narrative. What do I mean? Well, if you repeatedly refuse to call problems and identify them as such, for example, if you had breast cancer, well, there's no need to go looking around once you've seen the x-rays. Well, gee, you know what the problem is. Name it, and let's begin a course of action to correct it. That's all. But in this case, with these refugees, and where are the women? Where are the children? Where are the real tragedies of war-torn countries that we've all come to know and love since World War whatever? It's the women and children. The men are fighting. The men are home or off in another land fighting for the country and their people back home. You understand? These men are running away and leaving the women and the children because I don't see them. All right, so big election. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Most of you sheep are just going to run out and pull the D every single time without even thinking about it. But I tell you, last week, the Hillary, the health thing, and everybody's a conspiracy theory. It's always a conspiracy against Hillary Clinton. Isn't that funny? Like, she's never, ever guilty, but it's always they're just out to get her and making up this stuff, including when she's tripping and falling into vans, when she's, stuttering, when she freezes up like this and some mystery man comes up and says, "It's okay, Hill, keep talking." And God knows what they're doing, but it's phony as balls, I mean, I feel bad for the lady. I mean, my goodness. Going back though, Jesus Christ, when Ronald Reagan got shot, you remember that? Jesus Christ, this old goat had a collapsed lung. He had a bullet inch from his heart. And he's talking to people. He got into his limo faster than this broad who's falling down into the thing, and 4 people had to hold her up with that big pantsuit. So, no one's wishing poor health upon her, but good grief. It's literally like weekend at Hillary's, kind of in a way. They're literally dragging this poor woman across the finish line because they know it's the last gasp of the globalist agenda. If Trump becomes president, he is not in that club. I've said it 1,000 times before. That whole globalist movement, the thing that Obama loves so much, she's just not in that. Trump's just not in that. And so it's the last gasp of that. Now, it's so funny. There's not even a semblance of neutrality implied by our media today. And I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Clinton News Network. I'm talking about MSNBC. I'm talking about the New York Times. I'm talking about everybody, Washington Post, all of their stalwart liberal establishment. We spend so much time talking about the Republican establishment, how they've tried to sabotage Trump, their nominee, and they really have, and how the Democratic establishment sabotaged Bernie because they just wanted how they want it. They're all the same. They all come from the same mold. They just get a little different serial number. That's it. And some of them get a dick and some of them don't. Very, very, very small differences. But you have to watch this clip right here because what happened was Madam Hillary, Mama, the boss lady, that lovely, lovely bastion of, look at this statue. This is a nice looking picture of the hill right here. Digging that bush. Anyway, check this clip out because what they did was they put out the talking points, how to deal with the fact that Hillary was diagnosed with pneumonia 3 days before. Would have we ever found out about it if she wasn't stumbling into the car? And, why didn't they announce it? Oh, she's sick. Because they don't want to freak anybody out. She's way sicker than pneumonia. I'd like to say you heard it here first, but if you heard it here first, you're a knucklehead and been living under a rock. But the truth is, they put it out. They said, she just powered through. And then, in other words, she's the martyr. She's fighting for us. She just wants women and children and all of our rights. She loves us. She powered through. Powered through. And all the network heads just repeat it. The fact of the matter is, it's not even trying to be neutral, the media, anymore. What a terrible waste.
They thought she could power through. They thought she could power through it. They thought that she could power through it.
Wants to power through things. That too, the powering through.
Governor Jennifer Granholm said women just power through these things.
Ridiculous.
And I get it. I try to power through all
Utterly
my illnesses.
Hillary Clinton had a very busy day on Friday, and she powered through that day.
Yet she powered through.
Powering through illness is what women do every day.
She continued powering through.
I think about mothers powering through.
She powered through that week. I'm going to power through. That was her way.
All All right, so, oh my goodness, I spent so much time just picking on Hillary Clinton only because she is that globalist. I mean, she is dead set on hanging the head of America on the wall, and I mean mounting it in terms of a big game kill. If you take the time to really find out who this woman is. What has she done? What is she running on? Let's cut the crap. The fact that she's the first, woman major candidate, we've broken the ceiling as far as I'm concerned. We have a black guy now, and, we still have just as much racism. So as far as I'm concerned, once we have a woman, that's not going to cure anything. Everybody's just going to bitch louder. So whatever, and of course, white straight males are the ones who are the cause of all of it. We all know all of that. But really, though, intellectually, honestly, even without any conspiracies or picking on Hillary and always trying to find something, all that aside. So what is her record? What is she running on? I mean, she really has zero accomplishments. Oh, it's Hillary's fighting for you. Hillary, that's these slogans, these sloganeers. She's just decided to power through so she could be here and talk to all 20 of you. But in her time in the Senate, did she pass any child care bills? Did she co-sponsor any women's rights Senate bills? Did she do anything except for a bunch of talk? The answer is no. She renamed a courthouse for Thurgood Marshall, was one of her big Senate accomplishments. That equals zero for me. Okay, so what? She was a carpetbagger to begin with. She came from Arkansas. Of course, she didn't want to go back to that hellhole. So maybe it's foreign policy. She's a foreign policy expert. Really? Everywhere she goes is death and destruction. Let's be honest. Syria, ISIS, her support of the Iraq war. It's not a really Benghazi. It's not really a stellar record of anything, being accomplished in terms of foreign policy. And I mean, that's really just, honest to goodness, that's really just the truth. Okay, economy. Everybody always says about the economy that, hell, they fired her from the first healthcare thing when Bill Clinton was president. He put her in charge of it. She fucked that up, and the commies didn't get their nationalized healthcare for 20 more years till Obama. No accomplishments, zero. Economy. Well, if your economy is how to make a ton of money selling access to your office or through your foundation and whatever, and how to get access and pay to play, and well, if you maybe make a donation over here, perhaps we can get you to sit on that advisory board of the UN panel, nonsense. So if you call that her economic experience, I'll go for that. She's a fucking crook. Has she ever thought up a lemonade stand and hired a guy, or dry cleaners and put some people to work, or, anything? How about as a role model? She's a woman. She's strong. She's an inspiration to us with the pantsuits. Really? Well, once again, unless she's going to be running a online cuckold seminar, the female version of it, with a husband that walked all over her and philandered all over her in her face for 40 years, in all of our faces, embarrassed all of us. All that stuff is just swept under the rug. So really, what are we left with except for a very ill woman who's very, very ingratiated to the global network of stockbrokers and the Goldman Sachses and the power brokers of this world, the institution, the go-along guys, the established types who just, Republican or Democrat, they just know everything's going to go mighty smooth if Hillary just stays in power. And that's why you see such a full court press by the media, by all of the establishment people on both sides. I mean, for God's sakes, if some of these people got as aggravated about, terrorists making bombs in our streets and ISIS chopping on people's heads and throwing gay dudes off the roof, if some of that energy went into, actually trying to do some good and see things for how they are and take appropriate actions, calling terrorists terrorists, identifying the problem. Don't worry about the Skittles. There's people getting their heads cut off. What are you voting for? What is left with Hillary except for a D? But you know, my thing is there's a wide chasm between, you know, wanting to enforce border laws, say, or, you know, sovereignty laws, and not wanting to give control of the internet to a unelected global bureaucratic shitbox, you know. There's a whole lot of ground between wanting to just have a lawful society, meaning strong borders and that sort of thing. There's a big, wide gap between stating that fact and being a racist. There's a whole lot of area in between there. And yet the way that it's painted by the media with this bias, it's like, it's this limiting speech. It's oh no, you don't talk about that. You have to go to your safe place. You know, if any hurtful speech and all this. And really what happens is it narrows down the scope of ideas and it makes more dum-dums is really what it does. When you don't challenge people's minds, oh, it's fine. You know, it's very Orwellian shit. And, you know, it brings me to this, a lot of these, you know, the whole thing with the kneeling for the national anthem, which is a shitbag song anyway, by the way, as a piece of music goes, in my opinion. I know that's not what it's about. It's about what it stands for and all that. But, you know, all of these things, all of these little protests, this Black Lives Matter and all this stuff, whereas we know that Black Lives Matter, sometimes they matter once there is some revolutionary qualities to it that can unsettle, you know, the civil society. Black lives don't matter nearly as much when they're in the womb because 50% of those pregnancies, give or take, is in fact terminated. So they only matter sometimes, but I digress. All of these protests, you look at it and you're like, you know, man, people do have a gripe, I guess. Some people do, even though we have a black president, and certainly Colin Kaepernick, that dope from San Francisco, the bench warmer quarterback who started all this nonsense. And not only those, other people whom our president, Barry, has emboldened by his support, sometimes verbally or sometimes by not condemning. You know, either way, he's supportive of these things. But there's no standing, really. In other words, you know, when you bring a lawsuit, you have to have standing. It's you that got run over by the cab or your kid, or, you know, you have to have some dog in the fight, if you will. You can't just decide, well, I'm suing so-and-so because one time I heard that he did something to some. Now, you got to be the guy. And when I think about, you know, these ultimately what are calls to revolution, I think to myself, damn, you know, the real revolutionaries, and not just the American revolutionaries, but they're one of the greatest ones because of the republic that came from that revolution. The French revolted, and now they're back to being socialist jack-off serfs again. Everybody's had the ours, however, was different somehow. And, you know, you think of the standing of those guys and the sacrifices that they made and what their gripes were, the taxation without representation and the fact that they, you know, just weren't allowed to flourish in a manner that they thought was, well, it was good standing. Whereas nowadays, I mean, you know, and when you look at the race baiting, which in other words, you know, causing this civil unrest by, you know, firing up whatever aggrieved social group or what have you, all the race baiting is done by Democrats and people on the left. They're the ones firing everybody up. It's true. And these spineless Republicans just sit there and take it. They, because they don't want to be called racist and castigated for their racism and whatnot. Everybody's just scared to just stand up when the truth of the matter is as follows. Really what's going on is there was a thing called the war on poverty because there were roughly 14% of people, many African Americans, but many white people as well, living under what was deemed the poverty line. So that's when a lot of these entitlement programs began and what they call welfare. And then there were food stamps. And then there were, you know, all these kinds of things now coming up to now, you know, free school lunch, free enemas, whatever the fuck you want. But the fact is that since that 1964, I believe it was, since that war on poverty was declared, there's been something in the neighborhood of $22 to $30 trillion transferred from the producers who contribute to the GDP by whatever means. So $30 trillion taken from this group and moved over to this group in hopes of elevating them from this poverty that they live in and hoping once again to a rising tide lift all ships with that sort of philosophy. But really looking back on it, all those trillions and trillions of dollars, really what has happened is, would you believe the poverty rate now? Take a guess. If you guessed 14%, you're correct. Hasn't done shit. So what it has done is create an utterly generational dependency class. And many of these are African Americans. Now, they're not as many as, people, white people get more welfare. Of course they do, because white people's population numbers in percentage-wise are so much larger. But it's the African Americans that are the most vocal about their dissatisfaction, and it has to do with slavery and what have you. Now, I never owned a slave. There's no one on this earth that ever owned a slave. Probably my people were probably enslaved at some point by Egyptians or something, but I don't hold it against the dopey Egyptians. Point is, it hasn't helped because values have not been instilled, and there are generations of people who are living in low-income housing, and they've never seen dad get up and go to work and go to a job that he hates. All right, we've come to the end of another beautiful journey. We didn't get a chance to do the viewer mail today. The reason is because some of it makes me have to go to my safe place. It's so doggone mean, and it's not inspirational, and sometimes it's just downright nasty, and I don't have time. I have to go to my safe place. But until then, shout out to, you think that's funny? Shout out to mnn.org. Lets us do this stuff. Our sound tech, our guy today, Roberto. Anyway, I have to tell you, in between thinking and doing your thinking, I love you.
What the fuck America did to me? Trickery or conspiracy? Good white girl, not Hillary, kidding me. Nothing gonna change my sensibility. Life's a bitch, giving all the chivalry. Overheard in a broke man soliloquy. Bust guns on, break 'em down lyrically. Ring bells out, talk about liberty. Not tripping, shit got slippery. Fall from the truth in which proximity? Real authenticity can't rate well when you're false officially. Leave marks, leave parts of history. Who do we charge for the scars initially? Watch your enemies. Everybody brother ending up shot Kennedys.